Rancher lived alone for years until the Bigfoot carried a wounded woman to his door. Snow stretched endless across the valley, and yet a track appeared, too big for any man. At the rancher's cabin, a knock shook the wood. When he opened the door, a wounded woman lay at his feet.
Why'd it bring
Her
you
giant
here?
silhouette faded into the mist. He carried her inside, heart-pounding, wondering why would such a creature bring her here. From the edge of the trees, the beast stood silent, watching, breathing. The rancher lowered his gun, voice trembling. Not every shadow means harm. And as the legend turned away, swallowed
Not
by
every
the
shadow
rancher
means
whispered to the
harm.
firelight. Some legends don't haunt, they heal. In the frozen west, where only howling winds and darkness remained, a door opened to the legendary. That night, the wind from the distant mountains roared through the snowy valley, bending the thin lines of pine trees. Inside the silent wooden cabin, the fire crackled, casting a flickering glow across the rancher's somber face. For many years he had lived alone, left only with the old horse in the stable, the rifle hanging on the wall, and the restless memories of a past that never slept. Each evening, he had grown accustomed to a silence so cold it bit into the bone. But that night, as he stood by the window, his eyes froze. Upon the wide white blanket of snow where the wind had just swept across, a massive footprint appeared. Not the mark of a horse's hoof, not the trace of a man's boot. He slowly stepped out onto the porch, his hand instinctively brushing the grip of the gun at his side. Each heartbeat pounded in his ears like a drum. The valley lay utterly still, save for the wailing wind. Something was drawing near. Part 1. Footprints in the snow. The morning sun managed only a brief flash of silver across the distant mountains before vanishing behind heavy clouds. The valley sank into a cold, endless white. The rancher bent forward, snow-coating his coat, his boots buried to the ankles. He was used to the harsh winters of the west, but today something unusual weighed in the air. When he led his horse out of the stable, he froze. Right there on the flat blanket of snow was a massive footprint, twice the size of his hand, deep and heavy as though a boulder had struck the ground. The rancher knelt down, his calloused hand trembling slightly as he set it beside the print. Compared to a human foot, the difference sent a chill through him. Not a man. Not a bear. He whispered, his voice carried away by the wind. His horse reared with a panicked whinny, tugging at the reins, breath bursting into white clouds. Its instincts were sharper than a man's. Clearly, it too sensed something lurking nearby. The rancher stroked the animal's neck, though his eyes never left the edge of the darkened forest. From deep within the pines came a faint sound, crack, a branch snapping. Small, but enough to send ice down his spine. The unease stayed with him all day. He worked in the barn, chopped wood, patched the roof of the stable, but his gaze kept drifting back to the tree line. The feeling of being watched clung to him like a shadow. Each time the wind rose, he imagined hearing the steady, heavy rhythm of breathing from behind the trees. By evening, darkness fell swiftly. Snow came heavier, erasing the footprint from that morning, but the image of it stayed etched in his mind. As firelight flickered against the cabin's wooden walls, he sat by the window, eyes fixed on the night beyond. His fingers traced the edge of the rifle resting on the table. Then night came. Outside, a blizzard rose, wind shrieking through the wooden planks. The rancher tried to steady himself, telling his mind it was all illusion, tricks of nature. But his heart knew better. Something was out there, and it was coming closer. Suddenly, thump, 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 pounding shook the door. The cabin quivered. The rancher shot to his feet, hand seizing the rifle. The sound wasn't like any man's knock. It was as though a massive arm was hammering against the wood. He hesitated every step toward the door, heavy with the weight of the past. As his hand touched the latch, the door creaked open under a gentle push. A blast of icy wind swirled snow inside. And there on the porch was a sight he had never imagined. A woman lay unconscious in the snow, her breath faint. On her shoulder, a deep crimson wound stained her clothes. The rancher froze, unable to grasp why a lone woman would be lost in the wilderness on a night like this. Then his eyes shifted, and his heart stopped. Through the white mist, only a few steps away, stood a massive figure. Broad shoulders, dark gray fur breath rolling in thick clouds. It didn't charge. It didn't growl. It only stood watching. The rancher tightened his grip on the rifle chest, pounding. In that moment, he knew he was staring at the legend townsfolk had whispered about for years, Bigfoot. Yet what struck him wasn't fear, but its action. The woman, it had brought her to his door rather than leaving her to be buried by snow. The rancher knelt, his trembling hand brushing her frozen skin. A faint breath told him she was still alive. When he lifted his gaze through the mist, his eyes met the towering figures. A strange look in its gaze, part warning, part entrustment. Only a moment. Then the giant turned, retreating step by step, vanishing into the white forest. The rancher gathered the woman into his arms, listening to the winds howl, his heart torn between fear and a strange surge of gratitude toward a creature he should have despised. Through the long night, the cabin door closed once more, but he knew the door to legend had opened, and his life would never be the same again. Part 2. The Stranger in the Cabin. The wind howled outside, driving waves of snow against the wooden walls, but inside the cabin, the flickering fire struggled to hold on to what warmth it could offer against the night. The rancher laid the woman on the old wooden bed, covering her shoulders with a worn wool blanket. He stoked the fire, letting the scent of pine smoke spread through the room, masking the metallic tang of blood seeping through her torn clothes. With careful hands, he cut the fabric around her wound, rough, calloused, but steady. The blood had frozen in patches, staining her coat. In the firelight, the wound was clear, deep, long, like the slash of an animal's claws. The rancher frowned. Wolves, perhaps a bear, could have left such marks. Yet one thing troubled him. If it was a beast, how had she survived? And why had Bigfoot carried her here? As he wrapped the bandages, his eyes caught a small object slipping from her collar, a tarnished silver pendant etched with a strange spiral design. The rancher picked it up, turning it in his hand. He had seen this before in the old stories told by the native tribes. They believed it to be a mark of protection, a symbol bound to the giant of the forest. His heart quickened. Had she known of Bigfoot all along, or had it saved her before a faint groan pulled him back? The woman's stirred eyelids fluttering open. In the fire's glow, her eyes shone clouded with pain yet full of life. The rancher leaned back, uneasy at her sudden gaze, then leaned closer, his voice low and hoarse. "You're safe now. Don't try to speak too much." She swallowed dryly, her cracked lips parting with a whisper, fragile as the wind. "I was attacked. In the woods." "Some great beast? A bear?" the rancher asked. She shook her head slowly, fear flickering in her eyes. "No, bigger. But it didn't kill me. It carried me out. Then left me at your door." The rancher was silent. Her words confirmed what he had seen with his own eyes. Bigfoot was no predator. It had saved her. He stood pouring hot water into the iron pan, letting the smell of herbs rise into the air. While he waited, he sat back at her side, studying her pale face. For a fleeting moment, memory struck his late wife's gentle eyes in the firelight, the winters when he had not been alone. The feeling twisted his heart, then softened it like ash cooling in a hearth. His hand closed around the pendant. Perhaps this woman's arrival was no accident. Perhaps Bigfoot had brought not only a life to be saved, but also a chance for his own healing. Outside, the storm eased. The forest lay quiet. Yet the rancher felt a gaze upon him still. Stepping onto the porch, he peered toward the woods. In the dim whiteness, he caught the outline of a massive, dark figure standing motionless. Only a moment, then it was gone. Returning inside, the rancher no longer felt the same fear as before. Instead, a strange respect welled within him. He understood now, in this harsh western wilderness, some legends did not bring terror, but instead watched silently, protecting fragile lives. He sat beside the woman, offering her a cup of warm water. "Rest now," he said, his voice hoarse yet lighter than it had been in years. In the small cabin, the fire crackled as though bearing witness to the beginning of a strange bond between man and a creature of legend the West had long feared. As the rancher sat in silence, remembering his wife, then glancing at the fragile woman saved by Bigfoot, His eyes glistened with tears, but also with something new hope. For the first time in years, his loneliness began to waver. Part 3. Face to face in the mist. Rumors spread quickly through the small town. A few hunters swore they had seen a towering figure slip through the forest, footprints marking the trail's howls echoing in the winter nights. To them, it was not a legend to be respected, but prey large enough to buy fame and gold. They came armed with long rifles, lanterns, and hounds. Near the rancher's homestead, they called for him to join. The rancher stayed silent, his hand tightening on the worn grip of his gun. Inside the cabin, the woman was slowly recovering, still weak. He caught the pleading look in her eyes and then nodded. He knew he had to go, not to kill, but to stop them. That night, the moon burned bright like a silver mirror in the sky. Thick fog wrapped the pines, turning every shadow into a ghost. The hunting party pressed forward, dogs barking, lanterns swaying with flickers of orange light. The rancher walked at the rear, eyes fixed on the depths of the forest. A branch snapped. The group froze. The dogs whimpered, straining at their leashes. Lantern lights swept across the trees. A massive shape loomed through the mist, broad-shouldered, towering, its breath steaming in heavy clouds. There, a hunter shouted, raising his rifle. Before the trigger could be pulled, the rancher lunged forward, hand raised. "No, don't shoot." But the hammers were already cocked. Fear and greed stirred the men. The rancher knew that one shot would end everything. He lifted his own rifle, not at Bigfoot, but across the hunters, blocking their aim. "You don't understand," his voice was low and firm. "It is not a monster. It saved a life." Angry, scornful eyes turned on him. "Have you lost your mind? That thing is a threat. It must be brought down." In the tense silence, Bigfoot stepped from the mist. It did not flee, did not roar. It stood tall beneath the moon, watching them. The dogs fell silent, whining, retreating. The forest itself seemed to hold its breath. The rancher lifted his rifle, then lowered it. He took a step forward, shielding the woman who had stumbled from the cabin, her arm still bandaged. She met Bigfoot's gaze, her eyes trembling but filled with recognition. "Not every shadow means harm," the rancher murmured, his voice fading into the fog. In Bigfoot's dark eyes, a glimmer sparked, not of beastly rage, but of understanding. Slowly, it bowed its head, a gesture solemn as ritual. From its great hand, it laid something in the snow. The rancher stepped closer, picked it up. An old, weathered ring carved with Western patterns. His ring. The ring lost long ago in the storm that had taken his beloved wife. His chest tightened. Memories surged, her slender hand wearing that ring on their wedding day. Silent tears burned his eyes, mingling with the cold air. Bigfoot had kept it, and now returned it. None of the hunters dared fire. The sight before them shattered all thought of glory. Some stepped back, whispering that no prize was worth killing such a being. Bigfoot retreated into the mist, fading into silver moonlight. Only the rancher remained, clutching the ring, eyes filled with reverence. He whispered again, as though vowing to himself, "Not every shadow means harm." The moment Bigfoot bowed and returned the ring, the rancher felt his soul tremble, as though he had been given not just a memory, but forgiveness. This was no longer a story of fear, but one of respect, compassion, and of legend becoming a bridge for healing. The night passed. Snow ceased. The valley shone clean beneath the winter moon, still and pure. The rancher's cabin glowed warm, a lone beacon in the sea of white smoke, curling softly into the quiet sky. Inside, the woman's breath had grown steady. Days passed with the rancher tending wounds, cooking broth, chopping wood, keeping the fire alive. Sometimes he simply sat beside her, listening to the wind outside and the crackle of pine, watching color return to her pale cheeks. Each breath she took was proof he was no longer alone. One afternoon, as the rancher carried wood inside, he found her sitting up, wrapped in a wool blanket, her eyes brighter than before. She looked at the fire, then at him, smiling faintly but sincerely. "I owe you my life," she whispered. The rancher hesitated, then shook his head. "No, the one who brought you here is the one who saved you." Their eyes met, and silence spoke more than words. She chose to stay at the ranch for a time until her strength returned. The once quiet cabin now held soft voices, light laughter, and the rhythm of life. The rancher, long accustomed to solitude, felt awkward sharing meals and chores at first, but slowly he realized her presence did not break his peace. It made it warmer. One night, stepping outside for water, the rancher stopped. In the smooth snow beyond, fresh footprints appeared, enormous. They led from the forest's edge toward the cabin, then vanished. No sound, no figure. Only the deep marks, like a silent reminder the legend remained watching from afar. The rancher clenched the old ring in his palm, heavy with memory yet gleaming with light of love, of loss, of healing. For the first time in years, his eyes carried not only sorrow but warmth. He whispered almost to himself, "Perhaps I am not alone anymore." In the small cabin where the fire glowed against the night, the rancher finally found balance between grief and hope, past and present man and the unknown. Standing on the porch, ring in hand, gazing at the footprints in the snow, his eyes softened. For the first time, he felt he belonged to something larger than his loneliness, a quiet bond between man and legend. In the Wild West, compassion is the bridge between humankind and the unknown. The night drew closed, snow stilled, and the cabin shone like a keeper of fire in the wilderness. The rancher stood at the porch, ring in hand, eyes on the silent forest. In the freezing breath of winter, he realized something simple yet profound: man is never truly alone in nature if only he opens his heart. Bigfoot left no roar, no terror, only silence, heavy as mist. But within that silence lay mercy and kindness. And in that moment, the rancher understood some legends do not exist to frighten us, but to give us a reason to keep hoping. If you believe there are legends that carry hope, leave a comment, subscribe, and join me for the stories yet to come. And now I want to hear from you. If one winter night you opened your cabin door and Bigfoot laid a life before you, what would you do? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe so together we may step into more tales of humanity and mystery in the Wild West.